This is your daily word for March 21st, 2020. Our passage today is Mark chapter 13, verses 14 to 37. This is Jesus' long sermon on the end of the world. If you are reading along with us in the Bibles that we give away, you can find this passage on page 942. Now, what does this text show us? There are actually three chunks of text that I want to talk about today. The first is chapter 13, verses 14 to 23. This is where Jesus describes the sign of the end, which is the abomination of desolation. Now, on a sermon that I preached a few years ago, I went into a lot of details on this to make sure that we knew exactly what this was about. Quickly, Daniel chapter 9 talks about this. And then there are multiple previews of this before we get to the one at the very end, which hasn't even happened yet. There needs to be a rebuilt temple. There needs to be the Antichrist. He needs to desecrate that temple. That would be the abomination of desolation that Jesus is ultimately talking about. But his words in Mark chapter 13 don't make any sense unless they also refer to a time when people could actually flee from Jerusalem and be protected from what was coming to them in AD 70. So I think it's both. And I think it actually even refers to a time in 167 BC where Antiochus Epiphanes, a ruler at the time, came into the temple and desecrated it there. So there are always these foreshadowings in prophecy until you get to the very last one, which hasn't happened yet. So that's the first part. If you want more on that, go to the website and check out that message. The next passage is Mark chapter 13, verses 24 to 27. This gives us three features of Jesus' second coming. Here are things that are going to happen when Jesus returns. Jesus is not going to return in the sense that it could happen at any moment. No, there are specific signs that have to take place. That's why we separate the rapture and the second coming here at Redeemer. At least the pastors do. Is because there are no specific signs for the rapture. It can happen at any moment. When it comes to Jesus' return, there will be a violent shaking of the universe. The passage describes planets and all these kinds of crazy things going on with the sun and the moon. Next, there's going to be an unmistakable display of divine authority at this time. It's going to be clear that the God of the Bible is the only God that exists. And then finally, there's going to be a joyful gathering of God's people. This is the thing that Christians are longing for. It's not streets of gold so that we can walk around with golf shoes and scrape it off and then go to our homes and scrape it into a little bucket and collect gold. No, it's not that at all. The most important part about the end times is that you get to be with Christ. This separation that we experience now in this life will end, and we will be with him forever. And then finally, Jesus concludes his sermon on the end of the world by giving some application. You and I need to be ready. We need to stay ready. And it starts by being confident in God's word. Jesus wants to make it clear that what he's saying is true and will happen. And we know that the things that he said before have happened, so we can trust him for the end. And so what do we do? How do we trust? We watch and we work. We watch, we're looking, we're thinking Jesus could come at any moment. So we want to be ready. But yet we work like it's not for 1,000 years. It's not for 5,000 years. And so we're doing ministry and we're being faithful and we're living our lives for Christ and we're advancing his mission. Because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, what is going to be most important is the way that we advance God's word, God's will, God's ways, God's mission with our individual lives. And that doesn't mean being a pastor. That doesn't mean being a missionary. That means advancing truth in the world, advancing justice in the world, being a good citizen. But it also means preaching the gospel to those we know and love. So if you're interested in any of these sermons, any of these passages, you want to go deeper, check out the sermons that I did on Mark 13. You can find them on our website, redeemeraz.org, or you can find them on our YouTube page. Look for the series called Doomsday Jesus, and you'll find the sermons there. All right? Before I close, so if you didn't fast forward that part, I just want to leave by asking you, where will you be the second after Jesus returns? Where will you be? Where will you be headed? That's a question you really need to ponder. We'll see you next time for another Daily Word.